After the meal, my hands started to shake. Not dramatically, not enough to alarm anyone, just a quiet tremor under the table, like my body was whispering a warning my mind hadn't caught up to yet. The room felt too warm. The edges of his voice softened, stretched like sound underwater. "Hang in there, sweetheart," my husband said, already standing, already grabbing the keys. "I'll take you to the hospital." I remember thinking how practiced he sounded, how gentle, how late. We were halfway there when he turned off the highway. Gravel replaced asphalt. Trees swallowed the light. He slowed the car, leaned closer, and lowered his voice the way you do when you're about to confess a sin you've rehearsed. "I poisoned your food," he whispered. "You have 30 minutes. Get out of the car." He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't need to. He knew I was already dying, or so he thought. He stopped, unlocked the door, waited. I stepped out onto the dirt road, my legs weak, my vision tunneling. The car pulled away without urgency, no squealing tires, no drama, just a man convinced he'd finally erased a problem. Left alone by the roadside, I thought it was over. But then, I started counting. I used to believe betrayal arrived loudly, a scream, a slap, a single unmistakable moment. That's what love stories teach you, that truth announces itself. But betrayal is quieter than that. It hums. We met in a coffee shop 12 years ago. He spilled sugar on the table, apologized too much, smiled like he'd been waiting his whole life for permission to be happy. I loved that about him, how carefully he handled things, like he was afraid they'd break. We built a life on that carefulness, a house, habits, inside jokes, shared silences that felt earned. That's why it hurt the way it did, not because he left, but because he stayed while leaving. The changes came small, a phone turned face down, a new cologne, the way he corrected me in public, softly, like he was already practicing disrespect. Then the late nights, the work trips, the unfamiliar name that appeared once on our shared tablet before disappearing forever. I didn't confront him, not then. I watched. I learned schedules, patterns, passwords he thought I'd never guess because he underestimated the woman who had memorized his breathing in sleep. The proof came one night at dinner. His phone lit up, a message preview. 3 words were enough. "I miss you." I smiled, passed the salt, finished my meal. That was the night I stopped being his wife and became his witness. People think revenge is loud, screaming matches, broken glass, but that's just pain flailing. Real revenge is quiet, patient, legal. I didn't cry. I documented. I spoke to lawyers under the pretense of future planning. I separated finances slowly, invisibly. I moved assets where they'd be safe. I saved every message, every receipt, every lie. And then I did something he never expected. I let him think he was winning. When he suggested cooking for me more, I encouraged it. When he offered to take care of things, I stepped back. I let him feel powerful, let him feel clever. Men like him don't just want you gone, they want you erased. The poison was his final move, clean, untraceable, a grieving husband, a closed case. What he didn't know was that I'd noticed the prescription bottle missing days earlier, that I'd swapped our plates that night without hesitation, that the dose he gave me wouldn't kill anyone, but would make a convincing performance. By the time he whispered his confession, I already knew everything. Lying on that dirt road, I dialed emergency services with fingers that shook on purpose. I let my voice break, let panic bloom. They arrived in time. Always did, and so did he. He came back to the hospital thinking he'd play the part of the devastated husband. He didn't expect the police waiting, or the toxicology report, or the stack of evidence I'd already prepared. When they asked him why he'd turned off the highway, he stumbled. When they asked about the prescription, he froze. That was when I finally looked at him, really looked, and got ready to speak. I told them everything. Calmly, clearly, no hysteria, just facts. That's when I saw it, the moment it landed, the moment he realized he hadn't replaced me, he'd exposed himself. He found out who took his place in this story. Not a lover, not a younger version of me, but a woman who no longer needed him alive to feel powerful. Now I sit alone in a quiet room, signing papers with steady hands. The house is mine. The future is quiet in a way that feels earned. People ask if I'm angry. No, anger is loud, messy, temporary. What I feel is relief. He thought he gave me 30 minutes. I used 12 years. And in the end, I didn't die on that road. I stood up, brushed off the dirt, and walked away while he finally understood. He never knew who he was dealing with.